Welcome everyone and good evening. It's so wonderful to be here with you. My name is Bree Grissett-Smith. I'm the Chief Development Officer for Discovery Cube. We are so excited to have the first of several speaking engagements in our upcoming speaker series every second Tuesday of the month for the next 12 months. Tonight, Allan Stubblefield will be speaking for 20 minutes on the science of cybersecurity. What is whaling, smishing, 2FA, and ransomware? And why should you care? I'd like to take a few moments to thank the Innovators Leadership Council for their time and their treasures in supporting the Discovery Cube, and in particular, these upcoming speaker series. They allow us the opportunity to come together and embrace science as we navigate these difficult times through our own science education. Thank you, Janet Ray and Jay Witzling, for leading this incredible group. And thank you to all who submitted your questions ahead of time. If you have a question, please provide it in the chat room, and we will do our best in answering all questions in the allotted time. For those who are unable to join us or would like to view this broadcast at a later date, we will be recording it and making it available on YouTube. And now I'd like to introduce Jay Witzling, Innovator's Vice Chair, who will introduce our speaker.
Oh, thank you, Bree. It's a pleasure to have everybody together. Commander Stubblefield was our luncheon speaker actually this year in May, which obviously didn't happen, so we're certainly glad to have Allan with us. Allan is the cybersecurity teacher at Troy High School in Fullerton and a national champion coach for their after-school cybersecurity competition program. He has coached and mentored teenagers since 2010 in cybersecurity and runs the largest middle school and high school program in the United States with over 400 students last school year. Recognized nationally as an innovative teacher who is passionately finding ways to introduce cybersecurity into all schools for grades 1 through 12. Allan, who is a graduate of the Naval Academy, served for 21 years as the Navy Surface Warfare Officer, that's hard to say, prior to transitioning as a high school teacher in 2005. So I'm looking forward to welcoming Allan to all of us. Allan, it's over to you.
Jay, thank you for that great introduction, and thank you for having me. This looks like a great speakers forum that you're going to have. Just by a surface warfare officer, I was a ship driver. I didn't fly a plane, wasn't on a submarine. So I drove ships for 21 years, and now I've been a high school teacher. We'll be starting my 15th year. And let's go to the presentation. And share would be helpful. There we go. Okay, so hopefully everybody's able to see my my presentation. Next slide. So this is what I do on a daily basis. Top left photo, those are middle school students who learned about network security last year from two of our great 12th grade teachers, Alicia and David. The top middle is one of our cyber camp photos from last summer. We had about 6 pictures all about that size. So we had about 300 students last year. We're a 2-time national champion and a national championship trophy on the top right. I think a really cool picture down there on the bottom right, we offered elementary students a cybersecurity camp last year. So those are some of our 1st through 5th graders. And we'll be offering that again in 2 weeks. I've got, I think, about 75 elementary students signed up for our camps. So a total of 500 students who are going to be joining us online this year. And then finally, the bottom left, we were proud to have our very first All-American. This year, Carissa Kim graduated after appearing at the Cyber Patriot Nationals for 4 years, including being a national champion as a sophomore. She's also the very first female to earn All-American honors for Cyber Patriot. So we feel really, really fortunate to have her. Things we're going to cover today, passwords. You probably heard what's good and bad about passwords, but I'm going to give you my personal spin on things. Two-factor authentication. Why all of you should have a password manager to keep track of all of those all those passwords that you have in your life. We'll cover why ransomware is such a danger to society, and then we'll cover the various types of phishing, which includes smishing and whaling. Those might be some phrases that you haven't heard of before. So we build really good computers and really good computer networks, and we build them with security in mind, and yet we still have computer cyber attacks. Why is that? In the industry, it's because of picnics and pebcaks. Some of us might be considered a picnic or a pebcac. And what is that? So picnic, problem in chair, not in computer. As humans, we end up being the weak link in the system. We're lazy. We are creatures of habit. And cyber criminals have gotten really smart about trying to find ways for us to give up our credentials to get into a system. Another spin on picnic is pebcac, which is probably exists between the chair and the computer. Common passwords. So I really like this graphic. It shows you for the past 9 years, the top 10 passwords for each of the years. I got this from Wikipedia, not the most renowned authority on facts, but I think it's a great conversation starting piece. If you notice that the #1 password in 2011 and 12 was the word password, and that continued in 2013 to 18 when it was second, and then it dropped down to 4th last year. But notice that the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 has either been first or second for the past 9 consecutive years. Number 4 in 2011 was QWERTY. For those of you, if you look on your keyboard, the top left-hand third row is those letters are all in a row there. But one of my favorites is number 8, which is let me in, not to be confused with trust no one. So how do we figure out what common passwords are? I certainly have never taken a survey and somebody's asked me to list all of my passwords, nor would I answer one of those surveys. But what happens is when a cyber criminal breaks into a company and is able to get their entire list of usernames and passwords, that list a lot of times makes it to the dark web. And there are individuals that do research on the dark web that will find all of those lists of hacked into passwords, and then they will just do a number sort, and that's how they're able to figure them out. So, the other thing about this list is somebody's already broken into and used those passwords for evil. So I'm going to cover some of the goods and some of the bads. First off, 73% of us use the same password on at least 2 or more sites, and 33% of us use the same password everywhere. And that's from digicert.com. So a good password should be combinations of letters and numbers and symbols. We've heard that before. And they should be long, 15 characters. That's a long password. Some of us have gotten very tired with those things. And they also tell you don't use a word that you find in the dictionary. And even those little tricks of taking all the S's and making them into $signs and all the letter O's, make them into zeros, and even substituting 3's in place of E's, the hackers have figured out that mode too. So why do all of these things end up, why are these the rules? Why do they want this? And it's because when hackers don't know your password and they're guessing, these rules make their job more difficult. Have any of you ever used a passphrase? Something that's relatively simple. For instance, Discovery Cube is awesome. That's a phrase all of you can remember. You don't have to substitute anything, but that's a lot of characters. And that phrase by itself will work as an excellent password. Now, I don't encourage you to everybody suddenly adopt that as your password of choice today, but it might work for one of your passwords. Just don't use it more than once. And the reason why you don't want to reuse your perfect password is because when a company gets hacked, now your perfect password is out there on the dark web and others are going to try it. So that's why you need to have multiple passwords. So really and just to give you a sense for how fast computers have gotten, if your password was the word golf, it would literally be hacked, broken into instantaneously. If you said, hey, I'm going to use my long birth date, October 8th, 1975, it would take 2 milliseconds to break. Your dog's name is Fluffy, and you got and 23 is your favorite number. So Fluffy 23 would take a minute to hack into. And now you start substituting capital letters and numbers, and now it's up to an hour. Now you're going to do, you're going to add a symbol, you're going to make it 9 characters instead of 8. Now it's 3 weeks. But what if you just use Fluffy Dog? That's going to take 2 years. So again, my point there with passphrases worked pretty well. And to figure out how long it would actually take, I use the website there, howsecureismypassword.net. Yes, that is a real website. And you can type in any password and it'll tell you how long it's supposed to take to crack. Now, is somebody recording all of the passwords that you type in there? They might be, don't know. Now, if you've ever put in the wrong password too many times for, say, your email or your bank account, and you find that you've locked yourself out, that company has enabled that lockout to prevent computers and hackers from trying to brute force or guess repeatedly what your passwords are. If any of you have an iPhone, if you put in the wrong PIN to access your iPhone, and I believe it's 5 times, after the 5th time, your iPhone gets locked up for about a minute. Again, that's Apple trying to make your phone harder to hack into. At school, I have students who will borrow their friend's phone and will purposely put in the wrong PIN for 6 or 7 times, trying to get that iPhone to be locked out for an hour, just as a practical joke on their friends. And then why should you change passwords if you have the perfect password? Again, Fluffy Dog will take 2 years. Well, after 2 years, I wouldn't think that that's a safe thing anymore. So yes, you should be updating your passwords. What I'm really trying to encourage all of you to do is to get a password manager. Now, some of you who are in the analog world and this digital stuff is something you don't really want to mess with, pen and paper still works, as long as you've got it handy for you and harder for others to use. But there are password managers that you can get. You can pay money for some, and there's free versions for others. My personal favorite, and the one that's rated the highest by PC Magazine, is one called LastPass. I use the free version for that. But Keeper is rated just as high. Then there's Dashlane, Bitwarden, LogMeOnce, and Password Boss. Those are the highest ranked ones, but there's many, many out there. Some of them will work on phones. Some of them will be web-based, and others will do both, work on both your phone and on your computer. What I recommend is that you make a decision to say, I'm gonna start using a password manager, but go slow. And what I did 3 years ago when I made this conversion myself was I said, okay, I'm going to download a password manager. And then every time after that I needed to log into a website, I would put it into my password manager. I would change the password to something that was a better, more secure, random password. And I went from there. And then it needs to be a habit. I counted last night, I have 125 different sites that require passwords. And if I didn't have a password manager, I can tell you that I would have many of the same password using over and over again. Two-factor authentication. Most of us are probably using it, and you may not even realize that it's called two-factor authentication. If you log into your email and you have to click a button on your phone once you log in, or if you go to your bank website, and your bank sends you a text message with a 6-digit code that you have to type into the website, that is two-factor authentication. If you look at the graphic on the right-hand side, your password is trying to protect your important information. That two-factor authentication is another layer of protection, so that even if your username and password are hacked and a cyber criminal has it, they don't have your phone with them, and so they couldn't access your information. you would normally find, you would normally be able to turn on two-factor authentication in the settings portion of most accounts. Google offers a phone application. It's called Google Authenticator. It looks something like this. And you're able to include different, I think I have 7 different accounts that uses this. And so what happens is when I log into my account, it then tells me to type in that 6-digit random code that's there listed under the Google Authenticator. The right-hand side, it looks like almost a full black circle. That's a 60-second timer. Every 60 seconds, there's a new 6-digit random number that shows up for each one of the applications. And as long as I type in the number into the online application and it matches what's on my phone at that second, then I'm able to get in. And there are several videos out there that do a pretty good job of trying to explain what two-factor authentication is. So if you want to hear it from somebody else, there's one that I found down there. Ransomware. Hopefully none of you have been a victim of ransomware. I have not, and I'd like to think that was due to skill and not luck, but there's probably, because I can't control what my children do or what my spouse does. Sometimes you're the victim because somebody else did something. But a ransomware does one of 2 things. It could either encrypt all your files, and that's what they're showing on the left-hand side, or all of your data. That could be your pictures, your home movies, your financial records, all of your documents. It's all encrypted so that you can't read it. And then until you put in a code, then you can't see it. On the other hand, on the right-hand side, you could have a ransomware that just locks up your system and you can't do anything. Both of them are bad. From an individual, they're looking at anywhere between you paying $300 to $500 in Bitcoin, but they certainly go after hospitals. The city of Atlanta was subject to a ransomware. I think at some point we had 23 towns in Texas that were victims this year. The British healthcare system a year ago was really hit hard. I think last year, $3.5 billion worth of damage was done by ransomware. So ransomware could infect your system because you clicked on the wrong email, or the company that you have has got a weak security system. Phishing attacks. Have you ever wondered where that name phishing came from? So instead of you are on the lake there and you've baited your hook trying to track fish, the hacker is in the boat, sends you an email, the bait is a link, and they're hoping that you are going to click on that link and then put in your important information. Please be careful and think before you click. Let me go over a couple of types of phishing attacks. First of all, phishing with the PH. Those are mass email. So if you remember back when we used to get the Nigerian prince who was looking to pay us part of the of all of their money, that's kind of what a phishing email might look like. Phishing, V for voice. So that could be Microsoft calling to say that your computer has a problem, and yet you don't own a computer that runs Windows, but somebody's trying to imitate somebody else on the phone. A smishing attack. A text is also referred to as an SMS message. So if you've ever gotten a text from a number that you don't recognize and it had a link on it, that is an attempted smishing attack. Do not click on those links. Spear phishing. Now we're targeting, we're not mass emailing, but we're trying to target emails to some likely victims. So if somebody wants to try to get into a company, they might try to spearfish all of the people that work at that company. Whereas whaling is when somebody is sending a phishing email, but they're sending it to the chief financial officer, the chief executive officer, somebody who's going to have access to money, somebody who's going to have important information on their computer. And finally, email impersonation. My principal at school, somebody took his school email, they made it into a Gmail, they copied his photo, they made it look like his school email showed up like the Gmail, and then they emailed the entire staff and asked for gift cards. So that's what email impersonation is. Oops. This video won't show for you guys, but if you Google IBM The Talk YouTube, it does a really good job of showing children having the talk with their parents. So instead of the birds and the bees talk, this is a talk about what I call the digital user natives who are trying to help their parents and their grandparents survive and become more secure in the digital age. So again, down here at the bottom, if you would just Google IBM The Talk YouTube, this will come up, and Maya Allan does an awesome job with that. That's all I have for today. Remind you to be safe in both the digital and real world that we're in. The picture at the bottom is our informational meeting that we held last August with a couple hundred people in the school gym, and I'm not going to be able to do that this year. But we will be virtual with our cyber practices and our teams, and we'll still have several hundred students. So with that, I am open to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Allan. That was really interesting and fascinating. And now I feel like I have a better understanding. I'm sure others do as well. We have some really good questions, though. So I wanted to pose some of those to you. From Rick Bailey, the chair of our board. He did ask a question, which is, does the PW manager use a copy-paste approach that prevents keystroke logging?
PW manager. Oh, the password manager. Some of them do, and some of them don't. So there are logins that allow you to use what's called a digital keyboard. So the keyboard will show up on your screen, and then you use your mouse to actually type in what your password is, so that if there's a key logger, which is a piece of malware or bad software that's trying to copy down what your keystrokes are, it's not able to copy that.
Great, thank you. We also have another question. When are we gonna get rid of passwords, Allan?
Well,
and
if you
what do you do
it,
about your passwords? I think you shared you use one system.
I already did. Yeah, I use the password manager. But how many of you are able to unlock your phone with your face or your fingerprint? There you go. We're already doing that. So we are already doing that. And there are laptops that are built in with that same type of technology.
Great. And we have another question, which is, since we live in a digital world in school, home, and office, what things should we do and teach our kids and ourselves about keeping safe? And I think it's interesting to think about it in the school perspective with our students and their virtual learning.
So kindergartners and first graders are getting 2 hours a week on their school computer tablets, and they have to use a password to get into those. So they are already being exposed to the need to be safe and secure at a very young age. So for them, I think it's second nature. They are growing up in this digital world, and so they're very comfortable with digital phones and tablets, etc. I'm more concerned about the adults who, I mean, I wasn't raised on the internet, and so it's like, okay, you know, some of us are digital immigrants, and we've assimilated very well in the digital world, and others are not as well. So I think more of an issue, and we are seeing more and more education. I call it cyber hygiene, that's offered at the in the schools, so that students are better about being safe. And they're doing a much better job about not sharing their personal life on social media. So not a lot of Facebook use at the high school level.
Great, and I think that touches on another good question from Rick Sebastian this time, thank you. Where do most of the cyber attacks come from? Well,
you have cyber criminals that can come from anywhere. There are some great threat maps that are out there on the web, and they look like World War III with digital arrows going back and forth, and looks like country against country. But really, cyber criminals in 2019 made $1 trillion. That's more money than people selling illegal drugs made. So those criminals, they're in it to make money. Now, some of them have close ties with their national governments. Some have loose ties with the government. Some of them are controlling governments. So, you know, they're all over the place. So, yeah.
Wow, that's why it's so important to listen and learn and not let anyone in, right?
That's correct.
So we have one more, and this is from our wonderful Jay Wisling. Does the passport manager require a unique password?
Yes, so you've got to log into that somehow. And now, when it's installed in my phone, I'm able to use my fingerprint to log in, but I can also type in my password. The password that I use to get into that, I don't use anywhere else. I've never used it anywhere else. So, you know, it's one of those things where I have to change that on a regular basis. But you got to trust something. And, you know, but maybe you're to the point where I'm just going to keep a list on a piece of paper. And that's actually pretty good, because somebody would have to break into your house. I think the odds of somebody breaking your house are less than somebody trying to digitally get into your computer. So.
Well, Allan, please accept our heartfelt thank you for joining us tonight and giving us so many wonderful things to think about, consider, and move forward being safer in our cyber world. To close the evening, I would like to introduce Janet Ray, our Innovators Chair, to close the evening. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Bree, and thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. We are thrilled to be able to offer this virtual speaker series during these unprecedented times of COVID-19. In a quick response to changing times, our Innovator Leadership Council acted nimbly and created this virtual speaker series to be held monthly for the next entire year. I would like to invite all of you to join us every second Thursday for the next 12 months at 7 o'clock to 7:45 for the Cube Talks. You, as members of the Innovators, will receive a monthly invitation from Elizabeth Corella, our Director of Development at Discovery Cube. Be sure to register online in advance and let Elizabeth know if you have any friends who would be interested in joining the Innovators. On Tuesday, August 11th, Dr. Claire Leon will be presenting Creating Stronger STEM Pipeline, a summary from her research about attracting and retaining women in engineering. This is a hot topic. Dr. Leon has had 40 years of experience working in the aerospace industry and government and academia. She started her career at Hughes Space and Communications Group in 1979 and gained experience across the company through positions of increasing responsibility in systems engineering and program management. I hope that you can join us and that you put it on your calendar now. Be part of the new normal at the Cube, where we use innovative solutions to keep our Cube family informed. Let's hang in there together, be safe, and come out stronger through science at the Cube. Thank you and good night.